Flawedcast number 79, Critical Race Theory.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man. And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
Flawedcast. Flawedcast. Get in the arena.
Woo! America.
What's up, wee?
My weight, my stress, my anxiety, my blood pressure, my cholesterol.
I didn't hear bank account.
Yeah. No.
Well,
Hello.
it's good to hear you, Norm.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have to see him too. So
Damn it. Guess who's here?
Here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny.
What up, gentlemen?
good morning, John.
Johnny, it's good to hear you.
It's good to be heard.
Good to be heard.
People the mic faster than Norm's like that was your 5-second allotment on the mic time. It's good to be heard, fellas. And I now relinquish the mic back to Norm.
If you can move your chair to the corner, please.
All right. So we want to welcome everybody to a brand new triggering. This will, in fact, be a triggering episode of
Fact, Jack.
Yeah.
Warning.
Oh, that's right. We forgot about the warning.
Insensitive, triggering conversation about to commence.
This is a triggering episode of Flawedcast. Make sure you share. Make sure you subscribe. You can listen to us anywhere podcasts are: Apple, Spotify, Google Play. We are on Rumble. We are on YouTube, Flawed Inc. Our website's flawedinc.com. Still doing my vlogs. And June 1st, Smith's Heart of Man Repair Manual. You can pre-order now on Amazon. Just got the proof copies of the book this week, and
I already have a copy, but the author has refused to sign it thus far.
no, the author hasn't refused to sign it. There is a signing fee, and the author hasn't received the fee yet. So,
Wow. Is that real?
Normally, you sign it before you get the fee.
I'll buy the book, but I want my signature for free.
okay. Anyways,
Suspect.
well, yeah, everything's suspect. So anyway, nonetheless, we want to welcome and thank you all again. Please follow us on the Project Mockingbird social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on MeWe. We're on Parler and Gab. And as our tradition, Jason.
If everyone would take their right hand and place it over their left mammary and say with us,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
More God.
Yes. We're definitely going to need him to get through this episode. So, like I said, this is going to be a triggering episode, and I know it might come off as really pretentious, where 4 white, 3/4 of us balding.
4 white supremacists.
Yeah, well, but the important thing that we need to start doing, the quote Morgan Freeman in the beginning, is we have to talk about these things in a way that is productive and healing. So we're going to talk about critical race theory, and this has been something we've talked about, but not in such detail. And I almost feel kind of silly this week with all that's happening talking about this, because I see that this is a big device that the enemy, if you will, uses to divide and to distract and to cause havoc. And like I said, of 4 white guys talking about racism, critical race theory.
Talking about it as a Christian and as an American, not as a white person.
American.
But we need to talk about these things that we can bring what is in the dark into the light and expose it and have these conversations. So for people who aren't familiar with critical race theory, people who don't understand or never heard of it, really honestly don't know how that could be right now in the political climate that we're in. But let's get into some definitions of things. Jason?
First of all, I want everyone to know that racism is a noun. It's a belief or doctrine that inherent differences among the various human racial groups determine cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to the other. It's also known as institutional racism or structural racism, a policy, system of government, etc., that is associated with or originated in such a doctrine and that favors members of the dominant racial or ethnic group or has a neutral effect on their life experiences while discriminating against or harming members of other groups, ultimately serving to preserve the social status, economic advantage, or political power of the dominant group. It's an individual action or behavior based upon or fostering such a doctrine, racial discrimination, and racial or ethnic prejudice or intolerance.
So I like to.
So I guess I am it's not racial though, so what would it be if I'm intolerant of libitards?
Wisdom?
Wisdomism?
Wisdomist?
I'm a wisdomist.
Okay, so I like to include definitions of things so we can clearly have a starting point to have these discussions, which I think
based on fact, which
based on
I think is
fact.
totally wrong. No one cares about facts. It doesn't go with the narrative of today's message, so
I'm picking up your sarcasm.
Well, I should hope so, because I'm laying it on pretty thick.
Well, and that's precisely why we are going to try to be as factual about this as we can. So, illuminate the brief definition of critical race theory.
Have you heard about critical race theory? I'm guessing you probably have. It has already insinuated itself into many institutions and is making rapid progress into others. If it takes hold, it will completely change the very nature of America and the way you live. Critical race theory holds that the most important thing about you is your race, the color of your skin. That's who you are. Not your behavior, not your values, not your environment, your race. In critical race theory, if you are a member of a minoritized racial group, their term, not mine, you are a victim of a system that is rigged against you, a system that doesn't want you to succeed. On the other hand, if your race is privileged, you're an exploiter, whether you intend to be or not. Critical race theory begins from the assumption that racism occurs in all interactions. To see how this works, consider this thought experiment. Imagine you own a shop and two customers enter at the same time, one white and one black. Who do you help first? If you help the black person first, critical race theory would say you did so because you don't trust black people to be left alone in your store. That's racist. If you help the white person first instead, critical race theory would say you did so because you think blacks are second-class citizens. That's racist too. That's critical race theory. It can find racism in anything, even if it has to read your mind to do it. Critical race theory is a uniquely American invention. Brewed up at Harvard Law School in the 70s, now part of the academic and media mainstream, it is also uniquely un-American because it rejects the core tenets of the American, classically liberal Judeo-Christian value system. It turns the bedrock American idea upside down. Here it is in the words of Richard Delgado and Gene Stefanchik, two leading proponents. Critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and the neutral principles of constitutional law. It does this because critical race theory proponents assume racism is present everywhere and always, and they look for it critically until they find it, and they always find it. It has to be there because that's how the imperial European powers and then America set things up. Here, as in all dangerous academic theories, there is a kernel of truth. Human beings were not preoccupied with race until the 16th century, when Europeans began to explore and then colonize other parts of the world. Drawing distinctions between the races reached its peak in the 19th century with the widespread use of slave labor in North and South America. No one denies this. But since then, the Western world, and most especially America, has spent a lot of time, money, and blood breaking free of its racist past. It's been a rocky road for sure, but great progress has been made. Critical race theory says all this progress is a mirage. Racism never died, never even faded a little bit. It just hid itself better. Critical race theory, therefore, is not a continuation of the civil rights movement. It is, in fact, a repudiation of it. To critical race theorists, Martin Luther King was both wrong and naive. White Americans can never judge blacks by the content of their character. They can only judge them, always unfavorably, consciously or unconsciously, by the color of their skin. Ironically, not since the Aryan obsession in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s, or South African apartheid in the second half of the 20th century, has the social movement been so obsessed with race. Critical race theory is then, in a very real sense, a counter-American revolution. But that's a positive, not a negative to those who subscribe to the theory. The American experiment was given a 400-year tryout, and it doesn't work, so let's scrap it. That's what they believe. Is that what you believe? I'm going to guess that most of you don't. So how do we stop critical race theory before it infects the brains of too many decent Americans, especially young people, and turns us into something we have never been and shouldn't ever want to be? The answer is simple. Refuse to accept it. Don't be intimidated by the heads I win, tails you lose logic of this self-destructive, America-hating, anti-reality idea. Don't be bullied into thinking that you're racist when you know you're not, or that you're a victim when you know you're not. Defend yourself while you still can. I'm James Lindsay, founder of New Discourses for Prager University.
Critical race theory. As the word critical suggests, both theoretical frameworks are rooted in critical theory, a Marxist social philosophy which argues that social problems are created more by societal structures and cultural assumptions than by individual and psychological factors. CRT is loosely unified by two common themes. First, the white supremacy, societal racism. It exists and maintains power through the law. Secondly, and only slightly less well known, that transforming the relationship between law and racial power and also achieving racial emancipation and anti-subordination more broadly are possible. Critics of CRT argue that it relies on social constructionism, elevates storytelling over evidence and reason, rejects the concept of truth and merit, and opposes liberalism.
So, when they talk about liberalism here, they mean not what I term progressivism, which the Democratic Party predominantly now embraces that theory. It's the idea of Jeffersonian liberalism, which is something that I personally...
Classical liberalism.
Correct, yeah, something which I generally more gravitate towards, even more so than the label of a conservative. The reason this is important to bring out is because anyone from any group that looks any way, that prescribes to any system of faith or belief, can have racism in them. They can have biases. They can have maybe proclivities, if you will, that makes them think superior or inferior thoughts towards another group or type of people.
Would that not be deemed as prejudice more so than...
Well, racist is prejudice against a race.
Right, where I just say, just hate everybody.
Works for you?
We got some notes, but it's important to talk about this because there's so many civic organizations, now a wide swath of the political spectrum are starting to embrace these things. And we see different companies, for example, Coca-Cola recently start to employ some of these beliefs that because you are a certain race, that you as an individual are held accountable for something that happened, whatever, or someone's sins or some group of sins of whatever kind of people. That in and of itself is racism. We're talking about nonsensical hatred just based on someone's appearance. And, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. now, oddly enough, is just despised by this progressive movement. And when he...
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
And that idea is antithetical to what we're talking about. But I think it's hilarious when you see news clips of like a white guy yelling at another white guy's like, "You're fucking a white male!" Yes! And this is where all this is stemming from, or perpetuating it.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like people that believe in this critical race theory and the BLM, like Martin Luther King Jr. is not a hero to them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And it's really sad because I learned what a good man he was. You know what I mean? As far as like what he did in the civil rights movement.
He was flawed. He wasn't perfect.
Right.
But like you're saying, his actions...
Just like the founding fathers. They were flawed. Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr. was flawed, but their ideals,
like every human being who's ever walked
and the
planet.
Things that they fought for were sound. Only one perfect man that's ever walked the earth, and it wasn't me or Martin Luther King Jr.
You're exactly right. And even adding the term critical alters things. And I say this all the time. If you can manipulate language, you can control the narrative. So to empower or embolden one sect or one group of people to believe that there's systemic racism, there's systematic racism, that their victimology is fostered based on, honestly, something, in my understanding, is not existing. You now get where college universities, or like we even mentioned Coca-Cola, like this whole idea of diversity, it's a manipulation to create this
division.
Yes, thank you.
Disney's doing it too.
Yeah, a lot of these organizations are. What's the saying? Get woke, go broke. Let's start to get into this idea. I'm going to put links. Go ahead, Norm.
I don't care. Talk about believe in the science. There's no science in this. This is all feeling based. There's no facts to back this up, any of this. Black people can never be racist no matter what they do or say unless they oppose or stand in the way of critical race theory.
If you're still here and you're not triggered to death, I hope you can see, if you're trying to follow a trail of logic, you're like a cat chasing its tail with that.
It almost sounds like what we've said for so long about facts and feelings. It's really strange.
One day I have a dream where all white people will be racist all the time, no matter what they say or do.
Well, that's exactly it. And even like critical race theory
won't be judged by the color of their skin.
Right. If you're black, you can't be racist unless you disagree with what we're saying, and then you're automatically racist against your own race, in which I don't understand how that works. It's objective. I'm trying to think of a strong enough word. And I mean this with all due respect. It's like mental retardation.
It's dumbing down truth.
I mean, just give a listen to this quote from your president.
But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did.
So I'm just trying to think of a way to, some sort of analogy. And what I said, so last night we had a fire at Bill's house and smoked some cigars, and we were all talking out back in the fire pit. And several people asked, just how am I doing? And asked, how's my wife doing? And as soon as they asked me that, I knew that they didn't like my wife and that they wanted me to get a divorce. Just putting it right, that's my analogy. Like, that's what we're talking about here.
I want you all for myself, big guy.
Oh, and the other thing is that I noticed that everyone on the fire last night was white. Therefore, it probably was
and there was fire, and there was wood.
Might as well have been hoods.
There was wood, there was pizza.
Plant meeting.
Yeah, well, mozzarella cheese is white.
Right? I mean, it's just, this whole thing's getting so old. And when you see as many people as you see publicly denouncing this ideology, I mean, it's unbelievable. And there's so many people I know that are close to me that have swallowed this hook, line, and sinker and literally think back to their childhood and dude, I remember when my mom gave me new pillowcases to put on my pillow. Meant that was a sign that I should be in the KKK. Now that I think back to it, she wanted to make a hood out of it. I know it. Making shit up oh, dude, now I know why my parents bought me white tennis shoes when I was a kid. What? That's a stupid ass shit, though, that whatever. Bill, the doors in your house are white, you supremacist. It's so old, man.
Well,
it's
our Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Dunkin' Donuts is racist.
Yes. The cups are white on the outside, and the coffee's black and inside, and they're hiding the black. Therefore, they're obvious racist.
That's really the kind of things that they're trying to bring out. I heard a lady on the radio not too long ago saying all this stuff if you don't have any black friends, you're racist. If you don't talk about racism, you're racist. But if you do have black friends and you say you don't see their color, then you're racist. But if you do talk about their color and make it an issue, then you're racist. And you just have black friends because they're your token friends. But if you don't have any black friends, then that means you're I don't understand. Right. If I blink, am I racist?
The complexity of, once again, with all due respect to people who suffer, the complexity of the mental retardation associated with this and other progressive ideologies is astounding. It's beyond stupefying.
There's some more facts that I just want to throw out. I mean, we're talking about race, so let's just put some facts on the table, okay? The fact is this. Black people make up a little over 13%.
Yeah, about 13%.
Of the population of the United States. That is a minority. I mean, make it that way. It's the fact. The fact is they're a minority.
When you're not saying minority in a racist term, it's a fact, right?
If we look at a pie, if you look at a pie chart and you put a piece of pie for the different races on there, the white race, if you will, is going to hold the biggest piece of pie in this country.
Based on population.
Yeah, strictly on population.
That's why economically it shows that we're more successful just based on population alone.
Ooh, actually, Asians
Right.
per capita are the most quote unquote successful or wealthiest per capita.
But no, what I'm saying is this: is 13 you equal 13%, right? As black population, 13% of the population based on race. That's all we're talking about here. But yet we're saying that 13% of the population should hold 50%. That's what they're saying now: 50% of or equal amount of jobs and things like that. Or it's racist. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And I'm not saying don't hire black people. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
And
absolutely.
I just want to make it clear. What I'm saying is mathematically that doesn't make sense. And it's fine if they do that, if they're qualified. But this is what we're talking about, meritocracy. As Noam just said it, we're talking about equal opportunity, not equal distribution. You know, there's opportunity to do whatever you want. We've had a black president. We have black doctors. We have black lawyers. We have black police officers.
And we had President Obama.
And we had President Obama.
We had Bill Clinton and President Obama.
There's plenty of opportunity out there, and it's not about there being opportunity. And the reality is this, and I'm not saying it's fair or not fair. You know, a company decides they're going to hire half and half or whatever. And again, when they're saying that, think about this, right? There's still other minorities out there, but
Sure.
the only one getting any of the attention is the black minority. They're not saying we're gonna hire 20% white, 20% black, 20% Asian, 20% American Indian, 20% Hispanic. That's not what they're saying.
Look and see how other countries are treating minorities.
And even if they did that,
America's at the best. America, we are at the forefront of ending racism. I mean, we are the best.
Well, I wouldn't say we ended racism. I don't believe that's possible, but we've given equal opportunity.
To end racism.
Well, but think about that. End racism. And how many people?
You can't legislate heart change.
Well, you can't end
that's it,
racism.
100%.
You can't end crime. You can't end drug abuse. You can't end those things. You're not getting rid of it. You can't vaccinate, if you will, exterminate those things. There are bad people.
Well,
Period.
It's a condition of our fallen state as being humans.
There's always going to be an exception. But the idea is focus on the rule, not the exception.
I mean, the fact of the matter is there are individual racists in
absolutely.
this country from every race. There's
against every race.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
It's not a systemic issue.
At all. And I would love to see real proof showing that it is. Real proof, not feelings.
You know,
factual data showing systemic racism.
You know, even if you want to go, talk about this from the perspective of Scripture, Scripture doesn't define anybody by race. It talks about Jew and Gentile, believer and unbeliever. That's the way God looks at us.
John, do you want to read Scripture?
We'll be reading from Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 through 30 from the New International Version. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servant came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servant asked him, "Do you want us to go out and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them into bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." Matthew 13:47 through 50 from the NIV states this: "Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angel will come and separate the wicked from the righteous, and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth."
It didn't say anything about black or white.
Well, and that's
good and evil.
Right. And the next portion here in Matthew 25:31 to 46, Jesus talks about separating the goat and the sheep. And if you look at the examples that John
white
read,
sheep or black sheep.
Come on, who's the black sheep? What's the black sheep? Know who I am or when I'm coming, so you sleep.
So if we made this into a movie, what color would we make them all?
We'd make them
I'm just
all.
saying, this is totally how
we make them all trans.
Critical race theory ideologists, that's how they think. That's exactly, like, that's what comes in their head first.
Yeah.
Well, what color are the sheep? It's not about color.
That's how we should get that point across in a Saturday Night Live kind of setting. It's like, oh, I went to the store. What color was the store? I don't know. I went to Myers. I needed to get what kind of cookies. Were they black cookies? Were they white cookies? I need to know.
What was the
This
packaging?
is important.
Right.
I don't know. I went to the register and I had to pay. Well, was she white?
What color was the register?
I don't know. Yeah. That's insanity.
No, that's the ideology of critical race theory.
And again, it's just simply, I don't even want to say it's feeling based. It is insanity. it's having one mindset and that's it. That is actually racist when you think about it. That's what racism is.
It's a Marxist, anti-Christian, anti-Bible narrative. It's a push against Christianity. It's another
Well, not only that, but it's also
avenue for them to crush Christianity in this country.
Sure, and it's also intended to kneecap small businesses. It's also intended to feudalize the educational system. This is a widespread casting net. The people that are pushing these things, and this is an observation, not my feeling, and I would say there's factual data somewhere to back this up, but the largest segment of the political, the entertainment, the sports, business, whatever, that is pushing this narrative are these progressive left-leaning people. And, we talked about Martin Luther King Jr., who's a hero of mine, and this gentleman who said this is equally a hero of mine. This is a quote from Malcolm X, and a couple years ago I started really digging into his life, and I don't always agree with him. I don't always agree with everybody, but what he says here is so truthful, and it's just so haunting that he said this almost 60 years ago. So just let that sink in.
In this crooked game of power politics here in America, the Negro, namely the race problem, integration, civil rights issue, are all nothing but tools used by the whites who call themselves liberals against another group of whites who call themselves conservatives, either to get into power or to retain power. Among whites here in America, the political teams are no longer divided into Democrats and Republicans. The whites who are now struggling for control of the American political throne are divided into liberal and conservative camps. The white liberals from both parties cross party lines to work together toward the same goal, and white conservatives from both parties do likewise. The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leader, who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gains, token progress.
But being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
I disagree with that last portion. I think conservatives in the Republican Party has been a friend to minorities.
The Republican Party was created as an abolitionist movement. So, yes, that I agree. But to me, the larger point that I think he's pointing out is the idea that this white, I would say now, progressivism ideology is there to, now we would say, virtue signal. Like he was talking about, like the idea of the fox. They're showing you the teeth, but they're doing it in a deceptive manner to lure you in as a political football, as a pawn. I think what he says here has a lot of truth. And this isn't to pick on progressives or whatever. If you look at the people that are doing this, it is predominantly this left-leaning, this progressive ideology that is doing nothing but stoking the fires of hatred, stoking the fires of victimology, and causing more division and more vitriol and hatred towards one another for literally nothing. Yeah, are there racist white people? Are there white supremacists? Sure. But, when you think of that, it's either the Ku Klux Klan or Nazism. And let's just be honest, there's allegedly 330 million people in America. And between those two groups, conservatively, they say there's about 100,000. I mean, that's such a minute, and I'm not applauding that. I'm not condoning that.
You're stating the data.
The reality of it is that they're enlarging and magnifying something that has to truly be enlarged and magnified to appear like it is something. Like, I can't hardly see.
Well, the reason,
but I read a lot, and I always have to use reading glasses to help magnify things.
Well, another reason that they're doing that, though, is if they keep you, just like they talked about the fox and the wolf, like Malcolm X just did, if they keep you focused on that, it hides all the bad things that are really happening. They make it act like it impacts your everyday life, but it doesn't. Most people,
unless you let it,
but it doesn't. Most people impact your everyday life. Then you're not going to be focused on what they're really doing. It's kind of like, my kids, they'll be sitting at the dinner table, right? And we're like, holy cow, what is that out the window? Right? And the one brother looks, and the other brother reaches across and takes a chicken nugget off his plate. Right? That's what's happening. That's a fact, Jack.
We've quoted three gentlemen today, other than Christ: Morgan Freeman, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X. All black guys, right? All influential and successful in their own individual rights. And, I look up to those guys. And it's not because of the ideology we're talking about tells me if I don't, I'm part of a systemic problem and I'm perpetuating whatever. It's because I look at these guys and I'm like, wow, they purposed in their hearts to do something in regards to affecting people's lives. And that's admirable no matter what. Like, Gandhi was Indian. Like, yeah, I admire the hell out of that guy. Like, right? The idea with critical race theory and why I want to just kind of circle this around and herd the cats, to talk about this is because this is an ideology built on sand. When you start to look at it, it doesn't make sense. And if people want to be racist, I can't control that. I would prefer you not. However, when this kind of institutional ideology and idiom is being unleashed and brainwashed and perpetuated into culture on a large scale, it becomes problematic in regards to the fact that you're creating these problems that just don't need to be created. So
this ideology is going to hurt everybody.
Absolutely.
It already is.
Oh, absolutely.
Black,
ridiculous.
White, Asian. I mean, it don't matter what race, color, background you have. This ideology will hurt everyone.
It's another wedge, man. That's what it is. It's a wedge from the left. And they're just hammering in with a sledgehammer right now. That's all they're doing.
And that's why it's important to talk about these things. And like I said, I know it sounds pretentious as hell for white guys from middle America that live in the suburbs talk about this. But at some point, the threat of someone calling you a racist when you know in your heart, and people who know you know that isn't true, that you have to kind of just be like a duck and just let it roll off your back. And that's not to say that doesn't hurt. That's not to say these things on a level get to you. It begins with us just saying, and it's been this way up until recent, like this is a 40-ish years, kind of an ideology that literally the most qualified, the best prepared, the hardest working person gets whatever reward. And I want to encourage people, we have to get back to that. And if you don't have something, then you are fortunate and blessed to live in a land that you can acquire education, you can acquire a good paying job. And if you don't have a good paying job, you start at the bottom and work your ass off to get to the top.
100%.
I've had to fight my way back from the bottom several times. And, as far as I'm concerned, it's not pretentious for us to talk about this because I'm an American and I love people of all races, colors, creeds. I could care less. And I've had a hard freaking life and I've experienced no privilege in my life. So if anybody that thinks that I don't have a right to talk about this stuff, they can bite me.
In the effort to...
Well, before you hurt us, one more last thing. I want to sum up what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is this. Don't be a sheep and let this media and these ideologists and politicians use you as a pawn, not just as a black person, like Malcolm X said, but anyone who is buying into this ideology, you're being used. They're only showing you a snapshot, a magnified snapshot of reality, and using you to move their narrative. And what we're trying to say in this whole thing is, don't let them use you that way. Do some real research. Look at some things. Look at some facts. Zoom out for a minute. Don't get caught up. You can't see the forest through the trees. Don't get caught up in the trees. Zoom out. You're listening and letting these folks give you the information. They're telling you instead of you going out and trying to find data. They're telling you how you should feel, and you are feeling that way because they're telling you to, and you're giving them credentials that they have the right or some reason that they know enough that you should believe and listen to whatever they tell you. I mean, don't be so lazy. Do some damn research.
Progress from feelings to thought to now is in action. The message, I don't think, is necessary to black people or Hispanics or Asians. Honestly, like Malcolm was talking about, the white liberal, the white progressive mindset and the white progressive movement that is perpetuating this. So
it's their attempt to
exactly
control.
that the political football, the racial football, that,
That's right.
Final thoughts.
My final thoughts are this. I have a man in my life for several years. He has been probably at many times the closest thing I've had to a father. He's been a mentor. He's been a big brother. He's been a very important piece in my life to my spiritual health, my mental health, my emotional health. He helps me a lot in my life in those areas. Me and this man talk every single day on the phone, at least, if nothing else, via text message. When I see him, he hugs me and he says, "I love you, son." And I say, "I love you too." This man happens to be a black man in his mid-60s. So according to this Marxist left-leaning ideology, my question is, what does that make me?
I think a more provocative question would be, what does that make him based on that ideology? That he, as a black man, looks towards you like a son, because that's absolutely antithetical to what this is trying to spur, trying to incite.
That's good. I like that. My closing thoughts is this. I have a sweatshirt. My wife got it for me, and it's one of my favorites. And on it, it has 3 words. It says black on top, the line through it, then white, the line through it, and then human, and without a line through it, right? And of course, if I could fit Hispanic and Native American and everything else on it, it's all the truth. We're human beings. That's my final thought.
You know what's funny is I've been places with you wearing that, like so many like black people or Hispanic people, whatever, like they come up to you and say, "Oh, I love that."
Every time I wear it, I get
every time, I've seen that, yeah.
And the reality is that's truly how I feel. I believe. This is a feeling. I believe that the majority of people in this world, let alone this country, feel that way. Yeah. I believe that the vast majority of people believe that we're humans first. And that's how things should be, right? We all need to be looked at as humans and have equal opportunity as humans. What happens from there happens from there. And, I just want to say, life isn't fair. There are winners and losers.
Down here, it's just winners and losers, and don't get caught on the wrong side of that line.
And sometimes the person who should have won loses. It happens. Bad things happen to good people. Like, this is real life. That's how life works.
Sometimes when you win, you really lose. And sometimes when you lose, you really win. And sometimes when you win or lose, you actually tie. And sometimes when you tie, you actually win or lose.
It's not easy. We're all wronged in some way by someone at some time, probably more than once in our life. Good things happen too. Good people are out there. We can't look at any one thing and try to define an entire world from it. We got to quit magnifying into these small issues and making them into these, blowing them up, making mountains out of molehills. And the reason it's happening again is because the left is trying to hide what's really happening. They're trying to divide and create problems that aren't really a problem because it covers what's really going on. And they got people feeding into it. And I just love everyone, man. I do. I love thy neighbor, period. Thy neighbor means humans. I do. And I would do anything for anyone who needed it.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I want to thank you for listening. If you still are, make sure you subscribe, Everywhere you can listen to podcasts, we are there. Flawedcast, Flawedcast CLE. And we are on Rumble. We're on YouTube at Flawed Inc. Our website's flawedinc.com. Smith's Heart of Man Repair Manual, pre-order now, coming out June 1st. And yeah, okay. Bye.
Out.
We out.
More guys. If I can say this real quick, it wasn't your brother that brutally died, but it wasn't mine.
You do know that Ice-T has other songs.
Not ones that I like.
No one can talk like Morgan Freeman.
See, not horrible.
Did God paint you?
Did God paint me?
I said if Mike DeWine's a Republican, I'm a porn star.
What's your stage name?
William Flawless. I'm extremely concerned, and I'll have questions and comments at the end.
Note this. Norm's extremely concerned, and he'll have questions and comments at the end. I got a big fart just brewing. It's going to be a stinky one. I keep holding it in, so I don't know if I can do it the whole podcast.
Jason,
No, dude, if I'm going to let it go, it's going to be right in front of you.
I like Oreo, actually.
I do too.
Guilty pleasure.
I don't feel guilty at all. I just feel pleasure.
Don't call me.
Oh, sugar plums.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
Sugar plums.
The time of my life.
Oh, look, he's picking up after him.
I like Dahmer Metal.
Yeah.
Dahmer Metal. It's a song that I wrote. Did you guys know that I wrote a song? I need someone to put music to it, but it goes something like this. Kill your mother, kill your father, eat your brother. I'm Jeffrey Dahmer.
You should call Tilson.
This can't even go on the blooper reel.
Can we just
Let's have one long.
beep 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 beep.
Here's the blooper reel this week. Beep. Beep.
Shut up, John. Beep.
And then beep. And then I like to beep.
And I took a big pen and beep.
And then you're in here. Don't put this on a blooper roll. Beep.
And I like to sign beep with my beep.
Wombos.
And turn it around. Thank
Good
you.
to hear you, but not see you. Whoa,
I'm on the books.
Hey, Bill, we do this every Saturday at the same fucking time, but yet that alarm still goes off.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well, I got like 8 alarms every day that go off. And that,
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to go off at this time on this day.
Time to masturbate.
Oh, shit, that's a blooper reel right there. That is funny. Oh, man.
Son of a bitch. Where's old Joe when you need him?
Come on, man.
I don't puke on beer.
All right, Bill.
All right.
Where can they come out and find? But
Have you ever heard a white basketball player, complain that there's not enough white basketball players in the NBA?
Spud Webb did.
He's not white.
Son of a bitch.
But I do like the fact that you know who Spud Webb is. Probably just his name.
he was 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing, and he could dunk.
Ready?
Get down. Uh-huh. Yeah. Got some good news I heard the other day. Gay-ass DeWine said it's gonna be okay to remove your mask and walk around town. Don't know if I believe him, the guy's a fucking clown. You want to make some money, go get a shot. You'll get in the lottery to get a lot of money from the state of Ohio taxpayers. That's right, 5 million, 5 different people, or be young and get a scholarship. No one in this room is gonna win it because we don't believe in getting it.
We out.
Peace.
We out.
Word. All right.
Word to your mother, who's white.
I think that. Word to your white mother. I'm a bad white brother.